do you think, and this is open, who do you think pays more for power in Nigeria today? A middle-class family in Anthony or a poor family in, say, Zuru in Kebbi? Who do you think pays more? So the answer may surprise you, but it's the family in Kebbi, in Zuru Kebbi. And it's a question that people would assume the answer to is obvious, but the uncomfortable reality is that it's entirely possible that those types of families are paying more for a basic necessity like power. And it's not because the family in Anthony uses less power or because the family in Zuru is wasteful. It's just because of how our systems are designed. And it reveals a paradox that while power is one of the most powerful tools, or access to it is one of the most powerful tools by which to change the economic trajectory of a family, it also, because of how it's currently been financed across Africa, you have situations where it can become, access to power can become a regressive tax on the poor. So it's two truths, right? Two environments, same realities, but different outcomes. And we often think of the unknown as distant futures or new technologies, right? But they can very well be the unseen consequences of systems that are active right now. So, quick show of hands. Again, there won't be too much of this, I promise. Quick show of hands. How many of you know someone living in Nigeria who's completely off the grid? So, they have not unreliable power, not blackouts, but just completely off the grid. If they didn't figure out a way to provide their own power, they will be without power. How many of you know anyone in Nigeria who that applies to? So unfortunately, and what may surprise most people is that these groups, 4 out of every 10 Nigerians falls into this group. And then we've talked about the fact that a lot of times, members of these groups pay even more for power than, say, the wealthier groups. So you have a situation where 40% of our population in Nigeria, and it's a similar statistic when you look at other parts of Africa, are paying way more for power than they should be. So we can picture something for a moment, right? Imagine the number of hours being clawed back every day for every minute of additional access to power that people have access to. So imagine what that does to productivity, to learning, to GDP. Imagine the, let's say, mother in Zuru, who now, instead of spending hours making a meal, because she now has access to power, she has access to a microwave and other cooking tools, she's able to use that time she's clawed back into something else. That could have a positive impact on the GDP, right? We talk about, I mean, I'm sure we all follow, or we should be following our GDP growth numbers, both in Nigeria and globally. We're at a point in time where, global growth is quite slow, and anywhere we can see positive growth in this direction, we're happy. But something overlooked is solving a problem as fundamental as access to power, especially for the poorest groups, could be a tool to which to generate or improve, gather contributions to these GDP growth numbers that we so seek. So there's a bit more to it than meets the eye, right? Because you would wonder, why does someone who earns as little as the family I talked about pay more? And it's the systems of financing. So their access to power often looks like a small solar panel, a small set of batteries, a few light bulbs, maybe a radio, maybe a fan. But it's because electricity is something that they finance. It's not something they bicker about the way, say, we do. They have to literally pay for credits to access these things. And they do this piece by piece on credit, right? It's a cost that they have to weigh against, say, school fees or medication. And yet, access to even, as I mentioned a bit earlier, access to even the smallest amount of this power could quietly change the trajectory of an entire family and could lead to contributions to GDP. A few years ago, I met one of the most brilliant women, I think, in the power industry in Africa. She runs one of the biggest success stories as far as power provision goes in East Africa. She's brilliant, dual Ivy League graduate, sharp, visionary, commanding. And we just got into conversation, after talking business. And she literally told me that her journey from a small town in Kenya to Colombia to Harvard started with her mother getting access to reliable power. So it's her mother being able to take some time back, allowed her to get a legal education, become a lawyer, and then set her family on track to make amazing contributions. And that's why she's in the industry she's in today. So it's this dichotomy, right? On one hand, I mean, it's obvious that access to power has, positive impact on our ability to make money, improve livelihoods, all of that. But on the other hand, when we look at more, when we look at the masses or more bottom of the pyramid groups, we see that the systems haven't exactly been built in the most efficient way, right? In many ways, they are left holding the bag in a way that's not ideal. The takeaway here is that electricity doesn't just power homes, right? It manufactures time. And when compounded over, weeks, months, years, it may be a significant driver to that GDP growth we so desperately seek. So that's just one thing for us all to think about. I know there's a lot of very young professionals here, as you decide what career you decide to take on. Think about this manufactured time that could be brought about from increased access to power. Think about what you would do with it, and think about what little contributions you can make to bettering this dichotomy. Thank you.